If I could get a leash on her, but I've had Burmese cats in the past, and they have no problem walking on a leash.
Yeah, I'm shocked my cat took to it so easily. Like he'll just go by the door and I put his little paws in the harness and he starts purring immediately. But he was easier to train how to walk on a leash than a puppy, honestly, because I've done both and I was like, that cat was a lot easier to train.
No more puppy or kitty stories?
Well, right now my cat is seeing that I'm sitting in with a lap and she's eyeing it. Yeah, here she comes. Okay.
Well, at least our cats and dogs are not in Ohio where they're part of the prey. So
Yeah.
We spend our winters down in Key West. And if you've ever been there, you know that there are wild feral chickens which roam the streets of Key West. They are protected down there. You can't mess with them. And so a rooster who had apparently been in a fight and lost all of his tail feathers found his way into our yard. And so I adopted him and named him Rooster Cogburn. And of course, there's plenty to eat in our yard. And he stayed there until he regrew his tail feathers, and then took off for better climes. But I had a pet rooster for about a month down there.
Yeah, that's cool. That is cool.
We are also infested with iguana down there.
Of Fantasy Fest?
Excuse me?
What did your rooster think of Fantasy Fest?
Oh, just like every other rooster down there, he thinks it's crazy and I ought to stay away from it. But I'm in Issaquah right now, so I'm as far away from it as I could possibly be.
As John knows, I have experienced Fantasy Fest without knowing what was going on. And when after dinner we walked out and saw minimally dressed people of all body shapes, and fig leaves were optional. I kind of went, and my poor son was kind of going, Mom, I don't know what I've got you into. And I just laughed. But beware, latter part of October in Key West.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Arik, you might want to test your sound out with Mary since you have a part. So
yep, absolutely. Yeah, how do I sound?
You sound fine.
Okay, great.
Just a little housekeeping here. I figured you just just entered the Zoom, so.
And it's nice to see you, Arik. I've seen a lot of emails and things, but it's nice to see your face.
Yeah, well, Karen, I haven't seen you in a while in person, so we're overdue.
Yeah.
Oh, and David, how do you pronounce your last name, just so I pronounce it correctly?
The thing I always tell people is you're going to the market to run an errand to buy corn errands, your corn errand.
Errands, nice. That's great. And Ron, I should know this too, but the way you say your last name is Dotsauer?
Yeah,
okay,
you do know it. Yes.
Awesome. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like we got all our speakers here. Looks like everyone's ready to rock and roll. President John, when you are ready, please begin our beautiful Seattle Rotary meeting.
I actually have a bell, when I'm at home doing this, but I better put it down or I'll just keep ringing it. Well, I want to welcome everybody to our Zoom meeting, which is really something new this year, and I'm excited to have it. I wanted to tell everybody a little bit about a special meeting that we have coming up on Wednesday, November 13th. We do an evening meeting each month, and this is really something that is new and exciting. whoever's talking, please mute yourself. I want to also let everybody know that on November 13th, this meeting is very special. Not only is it a get-together, a social get-together at the Fry Art Museum that starts with a tour of the museum hosted by the museum staff, but following the tour, we have an opportunity to hear from our future vision implementation team on the progress being made to implement our club's future vision and to answer any questions that our membership might have. The meeting is going to be followed by drinks, food, and a time to socialize with our fellow Rotarians. There's no charge for this, so there will be food and no charge. And the details on registering will be coming out shortly, and I hope to see all of you there because it's important to know where we're going as a club. In addition to this, I want to let everybody know, most importantly, and I know Vicky is really excited about this starting November 1st. November 1st, we are going to have our annual contributions to both our Seattle Rotary Service Foundation as well as the Rotary Foundation International. And we want everybody to participate. We've started an early type of donation for our boards, and we're off and running that way because all of our board members will contribute if they want to stay as board members. And that's going to be very exciting. And then we know that everybody in the membership will be part and parcel of the donations because this is the real basis of what Rotary is all about: service, 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 and caring about the future. Well, enough about that. I want to welcome Joe Phillips, who is going to have a new member introduction of Stephen Hall.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. It's my honor to be able to introduce our newest member, Steve Hall. Steve grew up in Seattle and graduated from UW with an undergraduate degree in business. While in school, he did things like organize bicycle races, rode, and skied. And during college, he also spent winters on the Sun Valley, Idaho Pro Patrol and the Crystal Mountain Pro Patrol, volunteering for such activities as avalanche control. After graduating from UW, he became interested in environmental consulting thanks to all of his outdoor activities. He did volunteer work for the Washington Environmental Council and consulted to establish the environmental protection position at a major West Coast lumber company. In 1978, he was elected to the REI Board of Directors and chaired the Finance and Audit Committees and served on the board until 1987. In 1990, he established the Backcountry Bicycle Trails Club, now known as the Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance, and sought out abandoned railway grades for mountain bicycling. He traveled throughout the state as a bicycle advocate and served on the Washington State Bicycle Board. In 2000, he founded Ripped Sheets, a durable label printing business. And in 2010, he founded Columbia Label, a business printing labels for the wine industry. In 2023, he sold his businesses and jumped back into his passion for outdoors recreation by joining the Cascade Bicycle Club, Mountaineers, and the Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance. After selling the business, he and his wife, Leslie Ritter, formed a charitable foundation to support many nonprofits, including the Woodland Park Zoo, Blue Mountain Wildlife Rescue, Spokeswomen Racing, and others. So please join me in welcoming our new member, Steve, to Rotary 4.
Well, thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
For the introduction. And I want to welcome you, Steve, to Seattle Rotary 4, and we'll make sure that you have all of the pins and the accoutrements that are needed for our membership. So welcome. And now I'm going to turn this all over to Mary to mention all of our guests.
Well, the only guests we have today are our speakers from Strategy 360, Karen, Ron, and David. So welcome, Karen, Ron, and David.
Well, and welcome. And before the meeting started, we had a nice little discussion, and it's good to have you guys here to tell us all about what's happening with the election coming up on November 5th. And I trust every single one of us in Rotary will be voting as long as we are eligible to vote. So, and you know what was really interesting today, I just had a discussion before I got on with our Secretary of State, Steve Hobbs, who's really going through quite a bit right now as Secretary of State because he has to make sure that our elections are handled properly throughout Washington State. And it's not so easy these days, as we'll hear more about. Well, without further ado, I don't want to take time away from Vicki Oxley, who is going to talk about and introduce Lillian Sherman for our short program.
Thanks, President John, and also thanks to David Froome for another moment where your Seattle Rotary Service Foundation gets to share with you all of the great work that we get to do because of your donations. This year, you've already heard from Maddie Von Hoff and the International Service Project work that we do, as well as a couple of different meetings where you got to learn about the wonderful Rotary Boys and Girls Club. Today, I get to introduce you, well, you actually already know her because she is a member of our club, Lillian Sherman, who is the president-elect for Seattle Rotary Service Foundation. So she'll take over July of next year. Lillian returned to the Pike Place Market Foundation in 2012 after she spent 13 years leading fundraising and community relations efforts at Wellspring Family Services and Fair Start. Both organizations went through significant growth periods during her tenure, including major capital campaigns. Prior to her first turn at the Market Foundation in the late 90s, she created special events for Food Lifeline and for the Bon Marché. She spent her formative years in McMinnville, Oregon, moving to Seattle to attend Seattle Pacific University, where she earned a BA in political science and social work, and also holds an MPA from Seattle University. When she's not working, she is chasing her children around wherever they may be. And you will also find her outside running or walking the trails or swimming happily in the lake. So welcome, Lillian.
All right, I wanted to unmute and start my slide. I hope I've accomplished that. It's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to be with you all today, my fellow Rotarians. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I have been a member of this club since right before the centennial year in 2009, when I had the privilege of being a part of that amazing $4.2 million campaign to build the Rotary Support Center for Families at Wellspring Family Services, which means I have witnessed firsthand the generosity and passion for community that you all hold dear. I know that many of you join this club because you believe in the power of community to do great things. So today I'm excited to have the opportunity to officially kick off this year's giving campaign to the Seattle Rotary Service Foundation by sharing some of the impact that your gifts have made last year and inspiring you to make your gifts now so that we can continue making an impact in our community in the coming year. So last year, through the generosity of each one of you, the Seattle Rotary Service Foundation contributed more than $312,000 to 18 local community and international organizations. That is an amazing impact. and I hope you'll give yourself a round of applause. That generosity included a $100,000 community impact grant made last February. Out of 27 applications, the Pike Place Market Foundation, which I am honored to lead every day, was thrilled and grateful to have been awarded this grant, which bolstered our food access program. While I am confident that you are all familiar with the Pike Place Market and its original mission to provide a place for farmers to sell their produce directly to consumers, I'm guessing that many of you may have been unfamiliar with the work of the Pike Place Market Foundation and our social service partners who make sure that all of our residents and downtown neighbors have access to that farm fresh food. At the moment, there are more than 20,000 people in our downtown neighborhood who do not have consistent access to food. And 30% of our downtown neighbors report running out of food every month. The Market Foundation's Food Access Program works to combat this food insecurity by making the market's abundance more accessible to community members who live and work in the market. How do I make it change?
Click the space bar.
I might have to stop my share. Sorry. Technical, always. There we go. Can you see it? Okay. Whoops. The food access program, which includes our no cook bag programs, home delivery of staples, Pike Bucks, which is a purchasing power doubling opportunity for market residents, the Pike Place Market Garden, which grows produce that's donated to the food bank, our community supported agriculture program, and a bulk buy program that connects all of the daily meal providers in the market directly to farmers to buy in quantity. So food security has long been one of the most pressing issues faced by the low-income residents and workers of the market, and addressing it continues to be a priority for the foundation because when community members do not have access to healthy, affordable grocery offerings, the resulting stress of having lower quality foods or insufficient quantities of food leads to negative health outcomes. Food security is one of the most important non-medical factors that affects your well-being because the stress and constant worry of not knowing where your next meal is coming from is that significant. So it is not surprising that food insecurity worsened significantly during the COVID pandemic. And since the devastating impact of COVID, the need for food support has also severely increased. Inflation of grocery prices has made affording food impossible for many people, while the same increase in cost is impacting the inventory at the Pike Place Market Food Bank and in the meal programs across the market. King County data from 2023 shows that 13% of downtown Seattle residents experience food insecurity. That's 2% more than the county average. And its harmful side effects on health and well-being are significant. Additionally, the reduction of COVID era federal funding has caused nearly all of the recipients of SNAP government-assisted food benefits, known as food stamps to you and I, to have their benefits reduced, and some drastically, even while the price of food continues to increase. For the providers, like our partners at the Pike Market Food Bank, who served 4,300 shoppers, more than 75,000 shopping trips last year, it was about a 10% increase from the year before. This story has also dramatically changed post-pandemic. To provide the increase in the volume of food required to serve everyone, Pike Market Food Bank relies heavily on food suppliers like Food Lifeline and Northwest Harvest, who have been a crucial part of the donation stream for years. Sadly, those organizations have not yet recovered to pre-pandemic levels. And the example is, before the pandemic, our food bank was getting 10 pallets a week, and it's been reduced to 1 or 2 pallets a week, which means that the food banks are left to figure out how to find or purchase the balance of the food needed. So with all of these added burdens on a system that is already deeply challenged, the Market Foundation has stepped up its commitment to sustaining food services across the market and downtown by supporting the needs of our community without reduction. With all your gifts made to the Rotary Service Foundation and given through this extraordinary large grant made an immediate impact on a very stressed system and allowed us to bolster the programs by allowing the Market Foundation to provide additional resources to cover all of these rising food costs. One of the things that I loved most about being the recipient of this award was the opportunity to engage so many of you in the hands-on project of packing no-cook bags back on May 1st. More than 50 of you packed almost 800 bags in an hour, which is a pretty remarkable effort. Each week, our food bank gives out 400 to 500 of these bags to people living without shelter or without the ability to cook in downtown. So the bags you packed were put to use immediately and used within the week. While the Community Impact Grant was a wonderfully visible and impactful moment, please know that your gifts last year had an impact well beyond this single grant. And for that, on behalf of the many organizations that received grants, I thank you. So here we are ready to kick off a new campaign for the Seattle Rotary Service Foundation. The last few times that the foundation surveyed you to tell us what you want to focus our granting on, you ranked the revitalization of downtown as a top priority. We agree that the Downtown Seattle Rotary Club should focus our attention and resource on downtown Seattle, and that is where we expect to put our energy. I'm really excited about the discussion that foundation leadership is having right now with quite a number of our civic and nonprofit leaders who are working to improve downtown right now. Because we also loved bringing so many of you together to learn from the organizations last year, we're planning a similar event on January 30th. I believe you just got to save the date, to hear directly from the organizations who are having a focused impact on downtown right now. We're going to be giving another large grant of $70,000. The Rotary Service Foundation will continue to work throughout the year with international service and with the local community services committees to make additional grants. And our plan is to strengthen our impact by making fewer but bigger grants to organizations. As Rotarians, we commit to making 2 contributions every year, one to the Seattle Rotary Service Foundation and one to the Rotary Foundation. Both contributions make direct impacts on this community and support our key international projects through grants like the one I just shared. Our goals for the campaign are 100% participation by club members and to raise $200,000. For those of you who are listening carefully, you might have heard me say earlier that last year we granted $311,000. We were able to do this because of legacy giving from members that have left money in their will for the Service Foundation. Clearly, this type of giving has a tremendous impact on the Seattle Rotary Service Foundation's ability to make grants. And I would like to add another goal to this kickoff campaign, to encourage you all to add a gift to SRSF in your will, as these gifts clearly have an impact on years to come. So take a moment right now. You can use these QR codes or you can watch the totem for all of this information and join the 37 members who are participated so far and already made their gifts. I want to thank you again for making such a huge difference in this community through the Rotary Service Foundation and for all that you do in this community. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Lillian. This is really an important part, the important part of our Rotary year. And the whole idea of the legacy giving, we need to thank Kathy Williams for bringing us that, along with the Service Foundation and the push that we have for that. 100% is really an achievable goal. And you know, while we ask for a minimum of $400 per person for our Seattle Service Foundation, we also understand it's actually more important to just be a participant and make sure that all of our people participate in one way or another, whether you are able to give the full amount or a smaller amount. Please, please join us. It's part of being a Rotarian. So thank you again, Lillian. Thank you very much, Vicki, for all of your work on our Service Foundation. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Arik Corman. Arik is one of our new members and I am really pleased that he is going to be able to introduce our Strategies 360 for our main program today. Take it away, Arik.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. And by the way, if you haven't voted already, please do. I did. And the fun part is if you go to votewa.gov, you can check the status of your ballot, whether or not it's been received, whether it's been accepted. And it's just fun to watch the process. Well, Ron Dotzauer is the founder and CEO of Strategies 360. Ron has a 50-year career in politics, which started in 1974, when he became the youngest elected county official in the state of Washington. Since that time, Ron has managed the successful campaigns of a governor, 2 U.S. senators, and many other ballot measures. With an unbeatable track record for winning campaigns, Ron shares his insight and skills at campaign workshops all over the United States and beyond. He has been an integral part of 4 national presidential conventions, both Democratic and Republican, providing around-the-clock political analysis for several media outlets. Ron is currently acting as Como News' political analyst. Karen Waters is the president of Strategies 360 and helps oversee the growth and stability of Strategies 360 across the firm's network in 13 Western states, Washington, D.C., and Vancouver, B.C. She uses her extensive knowledge of government relations, public affairs, and communications to work on cross-disciplinary national and international projects for clients across the firm footprint. Prior to joining Strategies 360, she worked for U.S. Senator Patty Murray and did advanced work in the Clinton administration. David Kornerens is the Senior Vice President and leads Strategies 360's award-winning research practice. With more than a decade of experience in qualitative and quantitative research, David guides clients toward the most effective solutions to achieve their goals. Previously, he was the Director of Research at HIT Strategies, where he managed a portfolio of clients and supported the company mission of high-quality research and cultural competency. In 2020, as Director of Polling and Modeling for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, that's the DCCC, David managed a multi-channel flow of quantitative and qualitative research across 80 battleground districts. During his tenure, his team provided the analytics and strategic guidance to maintain the U.S. House majority by successfully defending 28 of 42 caucus members who flipped party control of districts during the prior cycle. David was trained in statistical research methodology and strategic consulting by pollsters Diane Feldman and later Ben Tolchin as he worked at their namesake firms. Please welcome Ron, Karen, and David. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. I've just got to say, you absolutely have a voice for broadcast. You can hear that in the way you speak. It's wonderful. Just the only thing that I would add is that our team is comprised of former elected officials. I would say the workhorse kind, not the show horse kind, high-level staffers, journalists, researchers, and also the best of the creative, digital, and marketing worlds. I see a lot of familiar faces here, many people who we have been honored to work with to improve the community. So we really value what you all do as Rotarians. Thank you for letting us join you. Just quickly, we are going to show a deck and then have time for Q&A afterwards. Please feel free to pop questions into the chat. And the other important thing is the slides, as well as for those people who are total data geeks and want to dive deep into the full survey instrument and the crosstabs. All that will be available on our website, and we'll put up that link, but it's strategies360.com. And again, we'll put up the links. So everything we shared today and more is available on our website. With that, I'm going to turn it over to David and Ron to get this party started.
You ready, David?
Yeah. I will be doing the high level description of each slide, and then I will be passing it over to Ron for more elaboration from his years of experience. But to start out, this is our poll that we've been doing with KOMO for the past, I believe, 4 or 5 years. It is representative of registered voters statewide. We spoke to 600 registered voters and made sure that this research was weighed to be representative of registered voters. So starting out, our first section is the information I'm sure everybody's interested in, the candidate elections and initiative measures. We're going to start out with favorability and name identification. That's one and the same. As you can see here, the color bars all represent major candidates running. Blue is good or favorable ratings, red is bad or negative unfavorable ratings, and the gray means that that certain percentage of voters do not recognize that candidate. And let me pass it over to Ron then.
Well, you know, first off, I winced when somebody talked about 50 years of this stuff. So I had to thank you for that introduction, but it's been a long time doing this stuff. So I decided that I wanted to start off with this slide rather than the head-to-head slides, and I'm going to tell you why. What you're going to see if you start combining these numbers, how closely the favorable, unfavorables follow the actual vote. Okay, and you're going to see that when we turn to the head-to-head stuff, and you'll see where by and large, the Democrats have a positive favorable over the unfavorable in Washington State. And Republicans right now, in terms of, you know, Donald Trump has a 61% unfavorable. J.D. Vance has, now this isn't the combined numbers here, is it? David, you don't. Is 40?
Yeah, sorry, it's the net on the far right.
Yeah,
so yeah,
I don't see that.
So yeah, J.D. Vance would be a total of 53 or 52% unfavorable.
Yeah. See, that's the numbers anyway. And what you'll see here is also the situation with Reichert. What I want to point out, for example, in the governor's race, his favorable is like 41-31, favorable over unfavorable. What you're going to see in a few moments is that he has a 10-point lead. So there's a very close tracking system, and that's, I guess, the takeaway from this slide is to recognize that this is a piece of information that campaign managers use a lot in terms of determining where the campaign is sitting. In some respect, this is even more important than the head-to-head numbers that we see. So go ahead. Let's go on to the head-to-head numbers. Okay, David. Well, this also I'll just take it.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
So you'll see here it's mine's being cut off, but I believe that number under Harris is what, 54?
55, 39.
55-39. And again, that pretty closely. This is Washington State only. This pretty closely tracks the unfavorable numbers. And you can see where with Trump getting 61% unfavorable, he's only getting 39% of the vote so far. Now, what's also interesting here is this tracks pretty closely with what happened in 2020. There was about I think Biden had roughly an 18-point margin over Trump in Washington State. And so we're going to see right now, I think that's about a 16-point margin. So it really tracks very closely with the 2020 numbers as well. In the governor's horse race, as I mentioned earlier, you saw the fave on Ferguson. That 10-point margin you saw is in existence here in the horse race, 51-41. Okay. The other thing that's important to note, and you'll see in a few of these other numbers coming up, the magical number is obviously 50%. So if any candidate is 50% higher on a poll 2 weeks out or 13 days out, they're in pretty good shape. If they're below 50%, then depending upon how close they are and how much money they got to spend at the end, that's again, polling is, as we like to say, a picture in time. But when you're above 50%, you're in pretty good shape going into an election cycle. Want to keep going with that, David? Okay, you can see that's the case in the Brown-Serrano race. And the name ID under Brown is a lot lower, obviously, than the presidential candidates and the gubernatorial candidates. But he's got a 10-point spread, and I would suspect he's probably sitting in pretty good shape to be elected the next attorney general. The Public Lands Commissioner race, which you may recall, I think maybe the closest race in my 50+ years of watching campaigns in Washington State. And I think Updegrove ended up with what, a 25 or 29 vote win out of multiples of millions, which is just stunning. Now, they asked me last night on television, well, why is he leading now as opposed to he barely won it to get into the general election? The answer is pretty simple. He had two very strong primary opponents that busted up, if you will, quote unquote, the Democratic vote. So because both candidates state their party preference on the ballot, Updegrove is now leading this race with about a 9 percentage point lead. However, I will point out this is a very high undecided, as it is in the AG's race. 15% undecided with 13 days to go is a really large number. Where you really want to be at is more like in the 5 to 6% of undecided to feel comfortable about where you're going to end up on November 5th. But having said that, oftentimes these undecided votes break along the numbers that we're seeing, the 48-38 or 47-38, tend to break in that direction to represent the body politic at large. Okay. Go ahead.
And I'll just jump in to say, obviously on election day, there is no space on the ballot to check undecided, but we cannot get every single poll respondent to make a choice. There's a lot of tactics that we use, as we can see in this slide. Next slide. Some of those tactics are the lighter colored bars are individuals who we had to follow up and say, well, if you had to make a choice today, which way would you lean? And so that is how we get the probably versus definitely. The definitely percentage are people who immediately made a choice, and the probably are individuals in this survey who, after being pushed in a follow-up, said they lean towards yes or no. But this is the first of 3 initiative measures we tested, and this one is about the carbon tax credit trading. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, before we move off of the head-to-head stuff, one other thing that's worth a note, and you're going to hear a lot about this in the next few days if you watch and follow the election coverage. People are going to talk about the ground game, or which is the same as get out the vote campaign. And oftentimes in campaigns, ground games, which are defined as doorbelling, phoning, social media contact, could even be called the digital campaign, could be called a ground game. Some of the stuff that you don't see very visible, like the TV spots or the radio spots or the print pieces, ground campaigns or get out the vote campaigns, about the best they can do, which can be helpful in a very close race, can be worth somewhere between 2 and 3 points. 3 is probably the most I've ever seen in terms of making a difference with a really good ground game. Typically, if one campaign is doing a really good ground game, another campaign is not, and it's a close race, the campaign with the ground game is going to win on a close race if one is outperforming the other. The other factoids, by the way, let me, for just a moment, to wrap up a couple of things. There's an old cliche in politics that goes something like this: money may not necessarily a winner make, lack of money ensures losing. And the threshold for almost most winning campaigns, if you are at a 2-to-1 margin of expenditure over your opponent, you're probably going to be in a good position to win. It's not always the case, but in some of these cases, like for example, if we were to go back to the governor's race, Reichert is being outspent by a magnitude of some of the margins I've never seen before. In some cases, in the area of $10 million, he's being outspent in this governor's race. Money matters, and that does influence the outcome of the race. Okay. By the way, before we move off of any of the candidate stuff and we get into the ballot proposition, do you have any questions? Or are we going to hold those till the end, Karen?
We're going to hold those to the end so people can hear the initiatives and other things and open it up.
Okay. Okay, good. Let's go on to the initiatives. So there are 3 high profile, and Davis mentioned one, ballot proposition. This is probably the biggest, highest profile one of all. And in talking about expenditures, the No campaign is hovering at, may end up between 18 and $19 million spent to defeat this ballot measure. And as you can tell, their money is being pretty well spent. They're getting there's a yes vote of 36% and a 53% no vote on trying to repeal the Washington Climate Commitment Act. So it looks to me that campaign and that result is pretty much baked. I don't see anything that's going to turn that around in the next 13 days. So that one is that one's going to end up in the no column. Go ahead, David.
And then
next one.
And then this is the next initiative measure we tested, which is meant to preempt or prevent any regulations or prohibitions on natural gas use. This looks like not definitely, but likely to pass and become law. Go ahead, Ron, with any other thoughts.
Yeah, just maybe one other one. The general approach on ballot measures, what I call the default position by most voters is they go to no more quickly than they go to yes. Okay. And so that also aids and abets the no campaign. But in this particular case, I think this is one where there hasn't been as much money spent on the no column, but it looks pretty good. So I would think with the margin they have now, this one will probably pass. But again, let me just caution, this is not at 50%. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then the last of the 3 initiative measures that we tested relates to funding for the Washington Cares long-term care benefits and services. And this looks like it will not pass, but with 18% of respondents saying they're not sure, nothing is for sure yet.
Yeah, that is a very, very high undecided or not sure vote at 18%. You don't see that all that often, but it also tells you that there's been less information provided on this ballot measure. And so a lot of folks are going to be looking at their voters pamphlet and maybe some potential editorials before they make their decision on this vote. But here again, with a 10-point margin going into the election, it looks to me like the no vote's going to prevail. The only one I feel really confident on is the repeal of 2117. That's going to go down, and it's probably going to, that number of 53% is probably going to climb a bit. Okay.
Okay. Any last thoughts on the initiatives, Ron, or should we push forward?
No. I mean, these are all initiatives are always tricky in terms of a lot of these get kind of these decisions get made late, but there's been so much information on 2117. We're seeing a really high rate of knowledge. Frankly, the 2117 No campaign has been very, very effective, in my opinion. Go ahead.
So backing up and moving to some questions more about issues both statewide and in localities, we tested the same question that we tested 2 years ago with a couple of modifications, but this is asking which 2 issues, and respondents were allowed to pick up to 2 issues. Does the respondent think that Washington's elected leaders should focus on? What I want to point out is we did not ask COVID-19 in part because of how low the response rate was. We did include a drug trafficking specifying fentanyl this time, and that gets a good sizable amount that pops out. But really the big 2 movers in terms of comparing 2022 to 2024 is that crime and public safety as a top issue has decreased somewhat. It's still top, the second choice roughly, or at least in the top 3, whereas cost of living has jumped from 27% choosing it with one of their 2 options up to 54% of respondents. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, yeah, just to reiterate just a little bit, it's interesting, the crime and public safety number that has dropped fairly significantly by 13 points in the last 2 years. It seems to track with what's going on nationally. Both the national statistics that are being shared with us are that the crime is down across the country and has reduced its issue in terms of it's still a significant voting issue. Let me underscore that. It's the number 2 issue, and after that, there's a fairly precipitous drop after that. And obviously the cost of living, which is including, housing, gas, energy, food, has doubled in 24 months. And the way we asked this question was addressed was really, what would your elected officials need to focus on, the top 2 issues, which I think is that David did a nice job of framing how that question gets posed. So, but after that, you'll see a whole potpourri of things that will surprise you that have 1%. Again, if you're interested in, as Karen mentioned earlier, I would go to the website and you can do a little deeper dive, and then you can also jump into the crosstabs and find out actually what's going on there. So go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to give you a heads up. This is about 2 minutes before we get into questions. So any final initiatives to share, please do so.
Sure. Yep. We can jump through some of these, and Ron, just feel free to cut me off if you want to add commentary, but I'll speed it up.
We got 2 minutes. We'll save the commentary for the questions. Okay.
So we drilled into a few issues here. Voters statewide still disapprove of the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade by 2-to-1 margin. That's consistent from 2022 to currently. We then asked what the impact was upon candidate choice, and again, consistent with 2022, more voters want their candidate, in this case for Congress, to share their view on abortion. So that data really, I think, speaks to why in a lot of the air wars with advertisements, you're seeing Republican candidates getting hit negatively about their views on abortion. Then we dove into, and I'll spend the rest of my time here, views on crime and public safety. Overall, almost 80% or 4 out of 5 voters believe that they are safe when they go out, vary or somewhat. However, 41% say that they see crime either very often or somewhat often. So still majority saying that they're safe and that they don't ever see crime. Of the people, the 41% who say they see crime, we asked them in a way they could write whatever they wanted. We call it qualitative data. What crime are you seeing? I think this is interesting because, like I said, we didn't pre-select any answers for them. They could write or say whatever they wanted. We then ranked it by the frequency, and crime against properties, public intoxication, reckless driving are the top reported crimes amongst those voters who are saying they see crime very or somewhat often. More serious violent crimes, thankfully, are lower. But just to give you an idea, this is what voters statewide are reporting. And then we asked about some different issues, and views for all of these were pretty split. We asked, with the recent Supreme Court decision making it easy for municipalities to enforce anti-camping laws, what the best approach to homelessness or unhoused issues would be. Voters are pretty split between being more sympathetic and focusing on housing, or being tougher in clearing out encampments. We then also asked, why is there more crime nowadays? Is it because there's a lack of consequences, or is the criminal justice system too focused on jailing people rather than rehabilitating them? Again, pretty split views. Slight majority agrees with that we need to be tougher and have consequences, but a sizable 43% say rehabilitation is important. And then lastly, we asked, why is there more drug addiction? And in this case, still very split views, but a slight majority say we need more medical treatment to solve drug addiction. And a sizable amount, 41%, say we need to be more forceful combating open air drug dealing, focusing on increasing police staffing levels in order to deal with drug addiction. So views on how to solve the problem are very split in terms of a multitude of crime and other issues revolving public safety. But overall, we have our last slide here. Voters say 80% of them say they feel safe when they go out, and only 41% say they see crime at some point, whether very or somewhat often. And I think we're ready for
that was covering a lot of territory in short order. But again, if you get a chance, there's more information on our website. If you want to geek out a little bit, there you go.
Thank you. You could share the link right on the chat right there, so we can check out more information. We'll start with our first question real quick. What about the capital gains tax initiative?
Well, that's going to go down. You saw that 2117, and frankly, it's not even very close. And again, the old cliche, money may not necessarily a winner make. Lack of money ensures losing. The no side is going to outspend the yes side in a rather substantial level. I think the no side is approaching. I think right now they're at $16 or $17 million spent. So it's all about controlling the message and the communications, and they've done a good job. And it's going to go. It's a big no vote. It may right now it's 53 or 56%. That could even climb a little bit.
Ron, if I could just interrupt, because this is my question. I was asking about the capital gains tax, not the cap and trade. They're two different initiatives.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Did we check that one out, David? Did we have that?
We did not test that as one of the three.
Sorry.
We only tested the three that we mentioned.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. What is the impact on voting by newspapers' editorial board, in particular Seattle Times?
Oh, that's a great question. It depends upon the profile of the race. The higher the profile, the less the influence of, this isn't just the Times, the less the influence of endorsements. The lower the profile of the race, down ballot races, or maybe even some legislative races, editorials will matter. The other transcendent activity that can occur is if somebody's outspending somebody by a substantial amount, that's a bigger factor than endorsements. Okay, they're nice to have because they can get legs. So campaigns will use them to try to build up more support by exciting a third-party validation. But by and large, in my opinion, editorial endorsements at higher profile races like governor and president are less consequential than other down ballot or legislative races.
Thank you. It makes sense what you're saying. Very logical. Question. Although you have presented polling data only for Washington State, what is your prediction on national outcome for the presidential race?
I knew that was going to get asked. So before I answer that question, I'm going to invoke a guy named Winston Churchill. Churchill, one day he was asked to define a politician. He responded by saying it's the ability to foretell what's going to happen tomorrow, next month, next year, and then to be explained afterwards why it didn't happen. So I want to be able to explain afterwards if you're going to get me out there, why maybe doesn't happen. Earlier, you heard me talk about a ground game and get out the vote program and so forth. First, basically 40 out of 50 states roughly in the United States don't matter at some level when it comes to presidential elections. So let me just put that out there to begin with. They're blue or they're red, okay? And there's not going to be a lot of change, right? So it really comes down to, as we all hear about 6, 7, 8, 9 states that really at the end of the day are those swing states. And the magical number is not as you all know, is not the popular vote, okay? Trump lost the popular vote and got elected, okay, the first time. So 270 is the magical number. And those 6 to 8 to 9 states are where the threshold for winning and losing a campaign is. And you see it every day where they're all spending their time. Now, they're close. They are very, very close. Now, earlier I talked about who's got the best ID, voter contact, get out the vote campaign going, okay? Which campaign has the most enthusiasm in those 6 or 7 states? Which one has the best get out the vote campaign? And I don't mean by having somebody spend money to get out the vote, to buy votes, so to speak. And I'm not going to mention any particular names. It really does come down to and by the way, this doesn't just happen. You have got to be planning for this kind of a campaign a long time out, okay? Because it takes a lot of work to close out to get that win. My hunch is, and it's just a hunch, is that I think that the Harris campaign seems to be a little bit better organized on the GOTV effort, okay? And that's going to, if that's the case, then I would give her a slight edge. If that's not the case, then I think Mr. Trump gets reelected. It's going to be right in that margin.
Thank you. I love that quote we share with Churchill. It's awesome. How many people were polled and how were they selected? How were they reached? So, by the way.
Yeah, I can take that. So we interviewed 600 registered voters statewide, which based on if you're a poll aficionado, you should know that's a good number statewide. The actual industry of collecting survey research has changed dramatically, as we all have changed dramatically in how much we use smartphones and how we communicate with each other. So we as an industry have kept up with that. And we interviewed all voters either through a online survey panel or through texted invitations to their phones, cell phones, that then direct them to a web survey. Believe it or not, that is how people are mostly taking surveys nowadays, and we are keeping up with that. The one safeguard is we made sure everybody we interviewed is on the voter file, because this is representative of registered voters. So every individual person exists on the voter file and is qualified to vote.
And the other thing, you also match it up with the demographics of the state population. So when you're done with the survey, what percentage are white, what percentage are African-American, so that they also represent the demographics of the state of Washington. So if you're out of alignment there, then you got yourself a little bit of an issue. All that gets double checked and rechecked.
And if you're really interested, you could go to the link where we have what's called the top lines, and that has all the nitty-gritty information, even more than what I just mentioned on the last page.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate this presentation and speech. President John, take us away.
All right. Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. I want to thank Strategies 360, Ron, Karen, and David for the presentation. Want to let you know that on behalf of our Seattle Rotary Service Foundation, we are providing a donation to Harvest Against Hunger for a number of meals of well cultivated food that will be given on your behalf to Harvest Against Hunger. I also want to thank REB Enterprises, Carl Benke, as well as Bloodworks Northwest for their meeting sponsorship support. Just noting one other thing that for you that Arik has mentioned, that he has seen a poll out, some polls out on the capital gains that also would show that it is going down to defeat as a no vote. So moving forward, I'm going to hand this right back to Jaime to give us our club announcements, and then I'll have some closing comments.
Thank you, President John. So let's start off with October 24th. That is tomorrow. We have the World Polio Day event at the Bill and Melinda Gates Discovery Center. Please join us for a lively in-person event. Drinks and canopies will be offered from 5 to 5:30 p.m. with programming starting right after. The registration link is available on the club website calendar and in the newsletter. Looking forward to seeing you there. Then on November 6th, we have a lunch meeting with the interim Seattle Police Chief Sue Rar. We are back at the Plymouth Church for our first Wednesday meeting in November. Yay. Please make sure to RSVP no later than Friday, November 1st, so we can make our catering order as accurate as possible. Then the following week on November 11th, we'll have our Hunger Strike Bowling event. Yup, that's right. We are excited to announce the 2024 Hunger Strike fundraiser to combat food insecurity in our community. This benefits Harvest Against Hunger and other local hunger relief efforts. This hunger striking bowling event on November 11th will be happening at several local bowling alleys. We encourage Seattle 4 members to join us for the fun, whether bowling, fundraising, or spreading the word. Even if you're not a good bowler, like some, we welcome you to simply come and cheer on your fellow club members, or just throw gutter balls like me. You can create your own team, invite friends, or join one of the other existing teams. It's up to you. Together, we can help provide fresh and nutritious food to those in need and support sustainable practices that empower communities. The link to our club fundraising page for the event went out in a club-wide email and will be redistributed again, thank you, Mary, to the club again shortly. This will be a good time, so please sign up. Then on November 13th, we'll have our Future Vision Club Assembly, and it's a social. It'll be at the Fry Art Museum. So please plan to arrive between 4:30 and 5 p.m. There will be a private museum tour. How cool! Which will commence at 5 p.m. followed by a Future Vision Club update at 5:30 p.m., concluding with a social happy hour. As said before, it's free to attend. Please RSVP using our Mayberry event registration. The following week, on November 20th, will be our lunch meeting at the Plymouth Church with Dr. Jeffrey Bornstein. Who is Dr. Bornstein? Well, Jeffrey Bornstein, MD, serves as the president and CEO of the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation, the largest private funder of mental health research grants. Dr. Bornstein developed the Emmy-nominated public television program Healthy Minds and serves as host and executive producer of the series. And in the following day, on November 21st, we have our lunch hour service event with Wellspring Family Services. We're tying it all back to the very beginning when Lillian first came. We would love to see a nice turnout on our final fall lunch break service event with Wellspring. Only 2 members came to our last event. Come on now, we gotta do better than that. This event runs from 12:15 to 1:30. It offers a quick and easy way for you to get some volunteers hours in, and you get to feel good about yourself. The work our club does. So please join and sign up where? You guessed it, in our Mayberry. Thank you for our time together. Back to you, President John.
Well, thank you, Jaime. We have lots going on in our Rotary Club. That is really spectacular. Let's all participate to the best that we possibly can. And to close us off, just talk a little bit about October 23rd and, the historical background that I like to give. In 1915, an estimated 25,000 supporters in a women's suffrage march occurred on New York's Fifth Avenue, led by Dr. Anna Shaw and Carrie Chapman Catt, founder of the League of Women Voters, which was really exciting. I just saw Stuffs in New York, which was the musical that covered all of this. So this happened in 1915. In 1935, Mackenzie King was elected Prime Minister of Canada for the third time. In 1973, Richard Nixon agreed to turn over the White House tape recordings to Judge Sirica. And in 1991, Clarence Thomas was sworn in as a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. This is the birthday in 1925 of Johnny Carson and Pele in 1940. So with all of that, I am adjourning us.
Thank you all. Thanks for letting us participate.
Thank you.
Take care.